Come back to your seats. We're going to get moving. Try to stay on schedule here. We're going to have lots of opportunity to have conversations. In fact, I have a really good lunch announcement once people are heading back to their seats.
No way. I think the microphone is not high enough.
Yeah. Oh, it's not. Oh, because you're on. All right, if we can.
Hello, everybody. We are going to start. Please, let's be seated.
Okay. All right, so a couple items, housekeeping items to run by all of you. First, the bylaws that we will be approving and disapproving, those were emailed to you. So if there are any questions about those, please see me, but you can reference the bylaws that we sent to you via email prior to this meeting, okay? The second thing is those of you who are representing, you're the sole representative of your institution and are voting twice, please come see me at some point before we vote. Just want to give you some specific instructions about the QR code. The third piece of housekeeping is that you should have received a business card sized coupon or of sorts for lunch today. It's going to be in Brandeis Dining Hall, and we will hopefully have our Creighton students be able to lead us over to that dining hall. Okay, so and our Creighton students, thank you so much for being great ambassadors for your campus. Okay, so let's begin with Father Dani Villanueva, who traveled all the way here from Spain to be with us. So we've been talking a lot about the universal mission of the Society of Jesus for some time now, but it's not long ago that we began to test truly the international structures of collaboration. In recent years, we're witnessing an explosion of networks and opportunities of working together on a global level that allows us to dream and plan for innovative ways of responding to new apostolic challenges. The Alpha Sigma Nu Network is an important part of this discerning apostolic body that dreams and envisions future possibilities together. But are we clear about our calls, our contributions, our real possibilities for transformation as part of the global Jesuit network? Here to talk to us about the real possibilities of transformation is Father Dani Villanueva, General Director of Entre Culturas Fe y Alegría in Madrid, Spain. Father Dani is a Spanish Jesuit computer science engineer, licentiate in moral social theology and global executive MBA from Georgetown University and ESADE in Barcelona, Spain. He has postgraduate degrees in humanitarian aid and leadership, innovation and NGO management. His main areas of specialization are network, digital communications, global citizenship, international development, and education. Please help me in welcoming Father Dani Villanueva.
Thank you very much. It's a real honor to be with you here today. I really believe on the power of this kind of gatherings, and that's the reason I say yes. When I think, Kate, we have been talking about this for at least 4 years. We have been inviting me to come, and finally we made it this time. This is, for me, Alpha Sigma Nu is an important piece of the networking side of the mission of the Society of Jesus. And that's why I think this conversation can be very enriching in both ways. You know, I'm working on international development. That's my angle of the mission. But thanks to my work, I'm moving around all the time in different groups, institutions, networks, and I see the possibilities that we have if we finally coordinate and synchronize in a proper way. So this is where I'm going to try to give you a quick glimpse of what is going on the international collaboration dynamics, the Jesuit apostolic body. and hopefully to ignite a little bit of your own reflections on what can be the role of Alpha Sigma Nu on that big picture. It's going to be a very quick, I think it's going to be 45 minutes, hopefully, not more, of ideas to give you inputs to your own reflections and discussion. I want to start with this picture. This is from Ukraine, in the Kiev train station. You know, the emergency of the war in Ukraine has been one of the most challenging situations that we have faced in the last months. And I just want to use the example because, you know, the war started in 24 February this year. So the very same day that the war started, we already sent an email to all the Ukraine Jesuits and all the surrounding countries in order to identify how we could be helping. I'm in charge of one organization that does the emergencies for, at the global level. So the very same day, we are already connected with the Jesuits on Ukraine and surrounding countries. Then one day later, Rome, our Curia already identified which one was the delegates for this emergency in each of the provinces, because this is not one province, are different provinces involved for us. In 4 days, we have already coordinating the Jesuit Refugee Service, the Savior Network, and the Curia in Rome, trying to set a way of proceeding for this emergency. And in 5 days, we have already an appealing for emergency appeal in most of the countries where the Jesuits are present. So I think I just want to call your attention to this. This is by far the best emergency response that we have had till the moment. So in 1 week, we were able of coordinating an emergency response at the global level. This is something unseen before in my lifetime, you know, and this is part of the impact of networking. Okay, the reason that we were so good at this time is because since 2004, as far as I can recall, we have been answering humanitarian emergencies in the Jesuit Apostolic Body in very different ways, not always in a good way, but we have been learning in a way that brought us till today. So we know more or less to whom we should contact, how we should collaborate, with what are the key elements and key players on the Apostolic Body to tackle and coordinate. So this takes a lot of time to understand how to collaborate, but the more we do it, the more we learn, and the better we do it for the next time. So we have been working with Fe y Alegría and the Jesuit Refugee Service for many years in emergency situations. I'm sure you know Jesuit Refugee Service, and I'm not sure you know Fe y Alegría. Fe y Alegría is our biggest apostolic educational network in the world. Is much bigger than the classic schools network, is much bigger than the higher education network. So Fe y Alegría is a network of education at the frontiers with vulnerable people. It was born in Venezuela in 1955, and since then has been growing to the extent that today we are in 22 countries and we have more than 1.5 million students, especially in Latin America, but also in Africa, and we are starting right now in Cambodia, Nepal. This is very important because it's a huge part of my work. I always say that I work with the two networks of education at the frontiers. So we have the higher ed network, we have the secondary ed network, and then we have GRS and Fe y Alegría that are on the frontiers. So my work is actually to bring quality education to those frontiers. And we do a lot of campaigning, especially with alumni, saying, you know, if you are happy with this, with the education you receive, help us to bring the same quality to the frontiers, because we really believe that the transformational change will come only through quality education for the most vulnerable ones. And that's what we do. So I just want to quote another example. It's very interesting. You know, in 2015, there was this huge earthquake in Nepal. So we have another emergency situation in that moment. It went quite well also, the coordination. But I want to call your attention that in last year, it's going to be 1 year next November. So last year, we started Fe y Alegría in Nepal. And this was coordinated work from the emergency in 2015. We started with humanitarian response, a lot of reconstruction, humanitarian aid, but then we moved to do a lot of philanthropy, global philanthropy and national philanthropy and regional philanthropy. We start working also in institutional strengthening with the educational works of the Jesuits in Nepal. And we finally got into global networking on the educational side, to the extent that what started as an emergency situation, today it becomes an education in development type of network. So I'm not sure if you can envision the challenge of this, but to move from, to get into a country when you have an emergency situation, to the extent of creating a development dynamic around education is a huge, in 6 years, this is a huge success also of the power of networks. So this is a coordinated effort of many different institutions. It's not just one or two, many different networks, and a huge coordination with the Jesuits in Nepal and South Asia assistance, that is what involves Nepal. These are just two good examples from my perspective of what is the power of networks in the current apostolic our body. The one who envisioned this was Father Arrupe, was visionary in many, many ways, but in this case, this is one of the most interesting contributions. You remember when he was in 79 visiting Asia Pacific as the general of the society, he had this encounter with the boat people that was, remember, this amount of people floating in international waters, escaping from the government of Viet Cong, and he understood that that was an emergency that couldn't be answered from a specific province. I think that was probably the most, or the first humanitarian emergency known worldwide in the late 70s. So he came back to Rome and he asked his council, and he sent a telegram to all the provinces in the world saying that we should do something. This is calling to our essence. I'm sure the guys in Rome say this guy is crazy, but they send it, and the overwhelming response from the different provinces was the reason that we created the Jesuit Refugee Service. This is the telegram that he sent. And for me, it's a very suggesting idea, this idea of what are the needs that you probably in your own scope of action are seeing that probably need a collective answer. So how can we, my question in this point used to be, what is the telegram you need to write, to whom, asking for what? But there are always collective problems in front of us that are asking for a collective answer. And we just need the vision and the first step of a leader in order to, with creativity, look for ways of answering to that question. Arrupe created the DRS because he saw that this was a problem at the level of the Jesuit network. And I think it's a very moving concept. It was not the first one. Actually, if you think on the Ratio Studiorum, it's already, the Ratio Studiorum, you know, is this pedagogical proposal of the Jesuits already in the 16th century, where they thought there is a common approach to education that we can use everywhere. So there is a sense in the Society of Jesus that we can somehow have universal approaches to life, to the world, and this is in our DNA since the very beginning. You know, I'm sure you have seen maps of the Society of Jesus everywhere. There are in the curias, in our houses, since the very beginning. This is probably the most, is the first one I have met in my research from 1646. It's already a map of the Society of Jesus. You have St. Ignatius on the root. It's like a tree, and you have the different provinces and the different countries and different communities as leaves of the tree. So there is something in our way of understanding the mission that is always asking to see us as a whole. as one body, and this is in our DNA since the beginning. And something has happened in the last few years, but you see in 2016, networking, the idea of working together at the global level has become one of the essence of our way of proceeding. So how is that we arrived here? This is just a very quick way of starting. How we arrived here? As I say, in our DNA as Jesuits and in Ignatian spirituality, there is a whole sense of wholeness. This is, I'm sure you have done the spiritual exercises, and if not, I will encourage you to do it. But one of the most important contemplations in the exercises is the contemplation of the incarnation. And this is written in the 16th century, and they didn't know exactly if the world was rounded or was flat in that time. So Ignatius, when he writes the contemplations, he said, you know, imagine the Trinity looking to the world, and he accepts in its roundness or flatness because they didn't know yet, but he's already asking us to pray, looking to the world on its wholeness. You say where people are being born, some people are dying, some people are laughing, some people are crying, some people are rich, some are poor. So it's a very interesting way of looking to complexity that is always our way of understanding contemplation to the mission. You know? So this is part of our DNA. The Jesuits since the very beginning understood we are invited to follow the mission of Jesus and to do it everywhere, ad majorem Dei glory, wherever is needed for the greatest glory of God. You know all these things. So there is something in our way of working that's what we are understood as those who are sent to wherever is needed to develop the mission. This is very interesting because even, I mean, Nadal, that the president of the university was talking about, Geronimo Nadal, he was going around the world at the very beginning of the Society of Jesus. We didn't have even the Constitution written yet. So they were giving like talks like this one, and he was explaining who were the Jesuits. And when he was explaining this, he was saying, we have different type of houses, and it's very, very interesting. He said, one of the houses is the journey. So through the journey, the world becomes our home. You have heard that sentence for sure. So since the beginning, the journey itself is a space for the Jesuits to develop the mission because we feel that we are called to go wherever is needed for the greatest glory of God. And even our fourth vow of obedience to the Pope, that I'm sure you have heard about it, is a vow of radical availability because Ignatius, what he wanted is, I want the Jesuits not to be linked only to one diocese. So he wanted to link us to the bishop of the universal church, to be called wherever the church wants us to be, not just in a portion of it, but at the universal level. So this is our DNA. That's what I call it conditions of possibility for networking, because since the beginning, we have been called to work that way. And I think there are two, I call it the spiritual principles. For me, there are two basic principles that we need to fulfill somehow. One is to understand that we are called to a universal mission. And that means we need to look to the world from God's perspective. And that should be the main perspective. Any particular angle should be understood in that framework. So this is an important call for all of us. We are called to a universal mission. It's this to be aware when we are having particular reasons, we need to frame them in a correct way. Otherwise, there are a lot of risk of looking to the world just from a particular angle, thinking that that is the wholeness. That's the origin of a lot of totalitarianisms, a lot of very narrow angles to reality. And the other big spiritual principle is this idea that actually we are not bringing God. God is already there, even before we ask for him or her. He's already there. So this is very important. So we are called to collaborate with God in creation. So God has a dream for creation and humanity, and we are called to transform the world towards his dream, together with him. So this is very important. We have a transformative vocation. This is inside of our DNA, the idea of social justice, the idea of vocation that is asked to transform following God's will. This is important. If we don't have this principle, we will not understand our vocation as transformational, or we will not think that the purpose of our life is actually to create a better world. If we think that our angle is the most important one, or my life is just for me, then we cannot talk about networks of collaboration. We are out of the frame. So this is why I say these are the two big spiritual principles. So check on yourself, and especially check on when you are collaborating with other people or having discussions with other people. If they don't fulfill both checks, I don't think we can do a lot of things with people that do not believe in universality or do not believe on social transformation. So since the very beginning, the generals of the society have been worried about this. We know we have the potential, but we don't really know how. Actually, Jansen's already in 1949, he said, oh my God, there are many things we could do only if we could join forces and work in a spirit of unity. That means that we were not doing that. So most of the Father Generals have a lot of, I think they are rebuking us for not finding a way to collaborate. Kolbenbach was the most important one. He said, we are not exploiting the possibilities we have in our international body. Actually, and I'm sorry because this is, I forgot to put the English version of it. So in the last few years, for example, in 1975, in our General Congregation 32, before that, in 66 is the General Congregation that elected Arupe. The General Congregation decided to make a survey to understand which things we could do together at the global level in a good way. And they come up in 1970 with these four: social apostolate, theological reflection, education, and mass media. These are the four key elements that the Jesuits in 1970 said that we could do these things together in a very good way. And they created some secretaries in Rome to somehow work on those global priorities. Okay, this was 1970. It's amazing that in that time they were already trying to do a kind of a strategic framework at the global level. It worked more or less. We have secretaries in Rome since then, but in 1995, Kolbenbach, in this congregation that elected Kolbenbach, they say we need to discern again those priorities. And in 2003, Kolbenbach came back with these 5 priorities. It's the second time we renew somehow the global mission. And they say, okay, we have Africa, China, social, intellectual apostolate, interprovincial houses, and migrants and refugees. So for a few years, those were our 5 priorities. They didn't call it priority this time. I think they learned priority was too strong. So they call it preferences. And they say, okay, there are 5 things that if we do it together at the global level, we can do much more impact. Okay, and that was 2003. And I'm sure you have heard about the universal apostolic preference, because in 2019, we came back to for the 3rd time with preferences at the global level. And this time was to show the way to God, to work with the excluded, to accompany the youth, and the care of the common home. So for 3 times we have been deciding what to do together, and also we have been trying to do structures to support those priorities. So my whole point here, and you will see hopefully where I'm going, is that we have a mission that is universal, and we have been trying to express it in many good ways. We are very good at writing, thinking, but we are not as good at implementing. So what is happening here is that there is a gap between what we say we are and we do, and what we are actually deploying, or the structure to deploy that mission. And the networks are the answer that are trying to fill that gap. I'm not sure if I'm clear enough. Sorry, because my English sometimes is broken, but the point that I'm trying to make is that we have a clear vision of what we want to do together, but we don't have the structures to do that yet. And the networks are emerging as a solution to create a real universal apostolic body. So imagine already in 1995, in GC34, everything about networking and collaboration at the global level is already written there, 1994. And they say in that congregation, networking is necessary to deploy the mission. The universal body has an untapped potential. And also this is very nice. I love it. It really helped me to read this. So we don't know how to do it. We need to go through trial and error. And we have been doing this in the last years. I'm not gonna go through it, but we have so many calls to networking in the last just in the last two congregations. Okay, a general congregation, sorry about that, is the gathering, is the highest level of governance of the Society of Jesus. Okay, it's a gathering that happens only when Father General died and we need to choose the next one, or when it is decided that we need to reshape the mission for whatever is happening around, and we need to retune the mission of the society. So it's legislatively is the top level of governance for us. So when we have been in the last congregation was in 2016. The previous one was in 2008. Don't know, we were there, right? So and it's very interesting because we gathered together like the 230 Jesuits elected from all the world, and they get together in Rome to discern, to name a new general, or to discern about the main topics of the society. So we always use the general congregations to explain what the society wants, because it's like the moment where we express all of us together. Okay, it's really important for us when a congregation happens, and it only happened 36 times since the beginning of the Society of Jesus. Okay, but we were lucky that in our lifetime there have been a few of them, and I was very lucky because I was with the communications in the last two of them together with Don working, and for a Jesuit is a huge experience, also a very interesting source of networking, because you get together with all the key players worldwide for a few months. So Arturo already says he's very keen on this vision on networking. So network allows us to glimpse and develop the immense international potential that are in our hands. So networking is a response, and it is happening. I just wanted to know this is happening. Only since 2008 that I have been writing and researching about network. The amount of network that have been coming up is incredibly huge. We have a project called Jesuit.network. You can check on the website, and you have all the networks that we have identified internationally linked to the Society of Jesus mission. And in this moment, we have around 83. There are two more than in the slide. You have this is a quick glimpse. This is happening as we speak. This is why this topic is so exciting. Some of the networks are by apostolic sector. Some of them are social apostolate. Others are about the higher ed, faith, or secondary ed. Some of the networks are in geographic areas. We have 6 conferences, 6 regions in the world where our mission is being somehow developed, and we coordinate among ourselves in those regions. We have also, and we are good on the networks that are one sector in one region. Okay, so we are quite good at this. I call it peer-to-peer networks at the conference level. So parishes in Latin America, universities in the United States. We are good at that. We have a long way of working institutionally, so we are good at having together similar institutions coordinating the mission. So secondary ed in the States is very well organized, for social centers in Africa, or parishes in Europe. So as far as we keep in one region and one sector, we are okay. But we are not as okay when we cross regions or cross sectors. And most of the most interesting networks in the last few years are actually those who are mixing regions and sectors, because reality is mixed. And also the challenge we are facing right now are global. So that's why I'm focusing or trying to focus you on that type of idea of global network. This is I'm not going to get into details. I just want you to have a sense that there is no one way to build networks. It depends on what you want to do with them. It depends if you want to coordinate institutions, or you want to do a common project, or you have the jamón serrano, we say in Spain, like the ham, like the best ham is when you want to do collective action. Okay, that's very difficult. It depends on what you want to do. You have different type of structures. Not all the networks contribute to the mission in the same way. But what is important for me, and this is key for this moment, is we only do networks for the good of the mission. So networking for us is not an issue, it's not a technical issue to improve the effectiveness of the resources or something, or it's actually a way to better deploy our mission. This is very important to understand. There are many different types of networks. So let me stop for a moment here and let's give a Twitter title. Is like what we are talking about here is that collaboration expands the possibilities of our mission. That's why it's important. Otherwise, we will be just talking about organizational development. This is not the key here. Is that the future of our apostolic work depends on the connections and opportunities that we are envisioning today through the networking part of it. So there are untapped spaces for a mission that are waiting to be discovered somehow through the mix of our current works. So we are very good at higher ed in this country, for example. You are very good at that, and you are very good at distant learning in higher ed. We have also a huge institution working with refugees. But only a few years ago, that connection was created. So suddenly, someone came up and said, oh, what about linking our distance learning higher ed possibilities in the States with our accompaniment of refugee population on the refugee camps? And suddenly, this idea of we can offer tertiary education to the refugees very easily without a lot of input, because you are actually mixing two current apostolates, very good ones. And suddenly you open up a new area of mission that is tertiary ed for refugees that nobody else or just a few institutions were offering. You understand that? So the point is, who is going to mix the institutions to create these new opportunities? It's not a question of technology. People think that this is just for freaks of technology, especially, you don't know how many times they introduce me as an expert on social networks. And they think it's about Twitter, Facebook. I say, no. This is not social media. This is not social media. It's not about technology. The key here, many times, the problem is our lack of creativity and also the lack of capacity to lead the changes that need to follow these ideas. So, and this is my piece for the governance of the society. I usually use this many times. I say the frontiers to expand the mission right now is probably our lack of creativity and our lack of leadership to change in a proper way in this direction. So I think this is important for you to understand, because it's actually very promising for the new generation. We have so many opportunities and they are waiting there for the right vision and the right leaders. So only in the last 14 years, this is why it's so exciting, because it's happening as we speak. We have been doing many of these networking opportunities at the global level in the different sectors. For example, in 2008, we gathered in Madrid, in El Escorial, most of the institutions on the social sector interested in public advocacy. And we gathered there and the question was, what do you think are the topics we could develop together in advocacy at the global level So let's choose a few of them and let's work together on that. This is, I'm not sure if you see, but you have Father General is there, Arturo. Okay, so we came up, again, sorry for the Spanish, we came up with 4 topics: ecology, right to education, management of natural resources, and migration. So somehow we discern that those 4 topics, if we do advocacy together at the global level, we can have much more impact. And we created 4 networks: Jesuit, this is a network for the right to education; Jesuit, this is a network of spirituality and ecology. Thanks to these networks, today we can be part of these big network, big meetings of the United Nations about ecology. So the Society of Jesus is somehow represented through this new type of network. Justice in Mining, another big network working on the effect of the extractive minerals in many countries that is in the origin of some of the big conflicts. All of these networks have a strategy. We are not going to get into that, but we have been learning how to do networking at the global level with those 4 social causes. So the social apostolate have been working on this for the last 14 years. Even we have a meeting of networking for justice in 2014 already. So gathering all the networks for the social apostolate. Thanks to this, for example, during COVID time, we were able of creating a dashboard trying to follow what was the effect of the COVID in all the different social and educational institutions worldwide. You can imagine. So in the first month, our big problem was that there was no information. So we didn't know what happened. People were not answering. We didn't have information anywhere. So most of these networks during COVID time in March 2020, they were like shut down, quiet. Everybody was answering in the local level the most urgent needs. So thanks to technology and thanks to the previous network dynamics, we were able of creating this dashboard that was critical to make to take some of the decisions in that time. This is huge. In that, for a few months, then things back to normal. But for a few months, we were able of somehow understanding the impact of COVID in our apostolic network through this type of work. So higher education, that is probably your sector. If you see all the global meetings that we have had in the last 14 years, all of them, you don't see it because it's very small, but all of them, the topic is always about the working at the global level. All of them. This is the map of the universities in the world. We didn't have a map before. It's also a way of understanding ourselves together. So this is the idea that I told you about refugees and distance learning education. It started through an idea of connecting people and ideas together, and it ended up in an institution that is called Jesuit Worldwide Learning. That is actually the technological backbone for distance learning education with vulnerable population worldwide. Father Hendrickson is part of the board. He was introduced. They talk about worldwide learning. So there are some intuitions that didn't work. For example, this one, Jesuit Digital Network, it was dismantled. It didn't work. But there are many attempts to create platforms to work together at the higher ed. And there are always strategies at that on those levels. And for example, in the last meeting at Boston a few months ago, on August actually, a new network of reconciliation is being launched at the higher ed. So things are happening as we speak. They also have another dashboard for initiative on peace building and reconciliation worldwide. Secondary education, also they have all the meetings in the last 14 years based on networking. They were the ones making the map, the first one. You see here, the regular schools, Fe Alegría, and Jesuit Refugee Service. So when you see the map in your schools, high in the secondary ed, you can see Fe Alegría and GRS as part of the map. And Educate Magis is a digital platform where they can do campaigns and cross information from all the different schools in the world, to the extent, and this is huge, that they have been able of creating 13 action points that all the schools in the world are trying to fulfill in the next 5 years. This was impossible to think about it before. So do you understand that we are creating new realities to the fact that we are collaborating? They open up new ideas. For example, this, you can have 13 action points worldwide. I mean, just 14 years ago, you talk about this and they will say you are crazy. This is impossible. But now, suddenly, is thanks to Educate Magis, my institution. So we have the Red Chair campaign in Spain, and thanks to Educate Magis, we are creating now all the campaigns. We do it also in English, so they can be distributed to the rest of the schools in the world through the platform of Educate Magis and the global network of the schools. Can you imagine? So just the fact that exists, it creates a new reality of possibilities. So last year, the global network of Jesuit schools was created. You see here all the different associations of secondary education, plus JRS, plus higher degree. And last summer in July in Barcelona, we have the meeting of the World Union of Jesuit Alumni, and the Father Mesa, the responsible for secondary ed, he was talking already about a pilot project of having a Jesuit world school. This is unseen before. This is totally innovation happening. This is 2 months ago. So they are exploring possibilities of creating educational proposals at the global level, thanks to the existence of the previous networking dynamics. I just want to call your attention to the world of potential future that happens when we create this connection. For example, and the Secretariat of Collaboration, we have, it doesn't exist anymore. They just merged it with the other 3. But we have 2 meetings in 2012 and 2018 just about networking at the global level. And this is where Jesuit.network is coming. If you go to that website, you can see all the information about networks, about events, etc. In the world of the Jesuits International. So at the end, networking at the Jesuit level is just a way of raising the apostolic level, apostolic agency beyond individual institutions. As I said before, this is not a way of improving the use of resources. It's a way of exploring new ways to answer the challenges of the mission. Okay, so I keep saying this. They are not structures of operation, but opportunities for channeling new ways of answering to the mission. You have the information. You will have all this presentation at your disposal. So let me go very quickly about some lessons that we have learned in the last few years. Arturo has changed our mind when he say all the time this question. He asks all the time, I'm not asking if your structures are good or they are working fine. I'm asking if they are the best ones for the mission. This changes everything when we think on this way. So this is not about, is Creighton working fine? Is Creighton working efficiently, or is a prosperous university? No. The question is Creighton the best university we need for the mission of the Society of Jesus? And then the whole question is totally different, because it's not a technical question, it's a missional one. And that changed our way. This is, I love to say this, the first lesson learned is that the organizational question is key for the development of the mission. Just be attentive to this. So the connections and the way we develop institutions right now are critical for the future apostolic effort. You understand? That's why I say we are wiring the apostolic body as we speak. Even here today, during these days in this meeting, the connections you are going to create or not, depending on that, there are many opportunities of potential future that will happen. So that's why, in my case, I bring this to the Jesuit governance all the time. So the organizational question is not for freaks. It's key. It's key for the future. It's key for the discernment of the mission. Second lesson learned, our apostolic body is hierarchical. We are part of the church. That's okay. But it's also a hierarchy. It's not just a hierarchy, it's a hierarchy. We are there. This is coming from Kotter, this idea of dual organizations, if you know the theory. But so this idea of we have hierarchy, but also if you look to the hierarchy, you will see that many of the institutions and people that are part of the hierarchy are linking up and creating relationships out of the hierarchy, that actually you need to know those links in order to create the right dynamic into change and possibilities. So for example, I don't know you, but I'm sure that here, if you know the Alpha Sigma Nu, you will see that you have chapters, national chapters, and you have hierarchy with the people with the different roles, but probably you know with whom you should talk in order to make things happen. Or you know with whom you should ask or spread that information or that order in order to create a common sense of things, or to whom you should ask to understand what is happening in that area. So that is part of the understanding the network behind. That is about relationship, not about hierarchy. So, and they are not in opposition. What happened is that in order to manage an institutional hierarchy, you also need to understand the hierarchy that is behind. So this is very important when you look to social change. Part of this idea is that we at the Jesuit level, we don't understand anymore the delegate as someone who coordinates institutions. We also have this idea of animated networks. So if you want to lead, Clara, if you want to lead this structure, you also need to create dynamics about networks, and the logic is different, and you need to have this in mind in order to move forward. The third lesson learned is that this is very important. Networks are the basic structure to create collaboration, and to have collaboration going on is the thing that allows us to do discernment. So that's why the Society of Jesus in the last general congregation is saying that networking, collaboration, and discernment are the three key elements of our modern way of proceeding. So networks are structures that allow to be a collaborative body, and to be a collaborative body is what allows us to discern together, to understand what is being listened and understood in different parts of the world, so we can put it together and see what is the Spirit asking us to go in the next way. Fourth lesson learned, the universal apostolic preferences are the perfect framework to create networks. So now, if this is something really new, now you can say that if you choose one of these four topics, you will have all the institutions in the world trying to somehow coordinate their own mission in these four ideas or four topics or four horizons. You know? So this allows us to align the institutions in a much better way. In 2017, we did a global survey on which topics you think will be good to collaborate at the international level. And these were the results. It's interesting because always social and educational idea of topics are those who convene more people in order to collaborate. So I will say, if today you want to launch a global initiative, you have much more opportunities if you go to the social or educational arena. Also, this is another lesson learned. There are some topics emerging through the different work groups that the different global networks have already set. So there are some global themes, for example, global citizenship, or for example, ecology, or for example, migration and refugee, forced migration. These three topics are coming up from the bottom up on our apostolic body as topics that gather the efforts of all the different apostles. So if you want to read in the proper way, you can say that those are the topics that have more chances of actually creating traction in global dynamics. This is a good idea. When you are thinking of what we could do together, I think we have much better chances if we gather around some of these areas than any other ones. 7 lesson learned is that this is not a question of technology, but we need platforms. If you really want to have a conversation at the global level, you need technology. If you really have a discernment at the global level, you need technology. If you really want to know what is going on, if you have a regular update, if you want to create cohesion at the global level, you need technology. It's not a question of technology, but you need it. So most of the networks have platforms, digital platforms, to create the possibilities of this collaboration. So back to you, you will need probably a platform where these interactions will happen. Another lesson learned that for you is very important is that we are an educational network. We can do many things, but actually, if you ask the people out there in our network, what is your link with the Jesuit mission? And half of them will say educational institute. Probably here in the States, even higher, because here education is huge. You know that not everywhere in the world we have such a network of higher ed as in the States. Here is probably higher. That's why Alpha Sigma Nu, even the World Union of Jesuit Alumni, you are much more strong here than in other places of the world. And finally, we are learning how to activate these networks. This is very important. We are learning, this is new, but secondary ed started in 2012 in a meeting in Boston. They call it colloquium. And we were not just meeting and gathering to know who were who. Then we have in 2014 a seminary, a conversation around topics on pedagogy and education that everybody was interested in. And then they have in 2017 a congress where they were able of making a discernment together in order to have an action plan. So I'm not sure if you are following me, but do you have a colloquium, like an encounter, you have a conversation about topics, and then you have a discernment about action. They call this discovering the potential of the network. And they are starting a second phase now that they are calling activating the network. They have already the colloquium last year digitally because of COVID. They are going to have the seminary in 2024 in Jakarta. So, and they will have for sure another congress another 4 years later. So, do you see the pattern? This is the most advanced strategy or that we have been discovering how to activate a network. Please, when you are thinking on how to activate Alpha Sigma Nu, think along these ideas because they are being proved and they are working. And finally, we need to understand that our apostolic body is a matrix. So we have regions, we have apostolic sectors, thematic, and we have networks. So if you want to do something globally, you need to activate the 3 dimensions. We have done that. The last time I have led something like this was, for example, the Pentecost Vigil during COVID. I don't know if you remember, we have a global vigil worldwide. So we activate the 3 levels and it worked quite fine. So we are starting to learn how to work as a whole. And these lessons learned are very important for you when you face how to do global network. So let me give you 2 recommendations to finish my presentation. One is the biggest challenge you are facing, and I'm thinking now in Alpha Sigma. The biggest challenge you are facing is the challenge of identity. I think this is very important. Networks, again, is not a technical issue. The critical issue is how to create a sense of belonging to something bigger than myself. This is not easy. And this is critical for you right now. And that's what I say, how to move from my attachment to Georgetown or to Creighton to a wider sense of belonging. This is very difficult and you need to work through identity and culture change. And this is not easy. But the first challenge for me is how do you translate honor society abroad, beyond the United States? I have to confess that I studied at Boston College. And when I finished, I was on that percentage, so they offered me to be part of Alpha Sigma, and I rejected. Because out of my coherence, I said, I don't want to be part of our honor society. It felt so weird from my Spanish background to accept to be how to call differentiated because of my excellence in academics. I didn't want to be in the graduation recognized as different from the rest. So I said, no, I don't want to be. And it looked really counter-evangelic to my mind. So only later on I understood the goodness of this. Actually, I regret a lot to say no, because I saw the networking opportunities. And thanks God that Loyola Andalusia offered me to be the honorary member, and I was leading one of the cohorts a few years ago. So now I'm part of the network. But do you understand the idea of honor society is not understood outside of the United States? So you need also to work on that, how to translate that, because this idea is very Anglo-Saxon and it doesn't translate to all cultures. That's why you are mainly in the United States. So I usually translate that this is like an elite network of Excel students, but we need to work on this. So it's not easy, but you have a challenge there of identity. Second, you need to work on spirituality and identity. We need to work through spiritual exercises. We need to work on communal discernment. So these are key elements. It's not technical, it's identity and spirituality. You know, I think it's key, the idea of social transformation, volunteering at the frontiers. So all that is what I call identity. So we need to go through that philanthropy, solidarity, all these create cohesion and sense of belonging. At the end, for me, these are the three questions that I think we should be asking to all the students in our universities when they finish, because I think they are key questions to work on in order to have a strong network. The first one is, do I feel part of something bigger than myself? And this is not easy to answer. I will challenge every board to ask if your institution is ready to be part of something bigger than itself. Especially the stronger institutions, the worse they are facing this question. The less they need of others, and this is critical for network. So this is, personally, this is a huge question. Do I feel that I am part of a wider history and part of a wider mission? So my efforts are being built up on top of the shoulders of previous, and someone else will continue my legacy in the future. This is huge, anthropological and spiritual. Second, do I experience and desire to live my vocation to transformation? Do I feel this call to be transformative? Because otherwise, and this is something that many people in our institutions do not feel, they are part of something bigger. They are here because of the quality education, but they don't feel they have a transformative vocation for the world. And the third question is, do I understand that I can only achieve my life goals if I do it with others? So do I believe that collaboration is essential to live to the fullness myself? So this is huge. Those questions are full of depth, and I hope you can understand, because I'm challenging you to face this as part of the global networking. So the link is weird, but it's basic to work on identity. And the second challenge is how to activate this network, how to activate Alpha Sigma. And this is not easy. And I think you need to create a dynamic platform that allows participation, co-creation, in order to activate the network. First, I think you need to manage differently, local, regional, international, and this is not easy because you are totally uneven network. You are mainly in the United States, so I don't think you are yet a global network. You are mainly a US network with a few chapters around. But we are happy to jump in and to help, but be aware of that. Second, also attention to the network strategy of the International Association of Jesuit Universities, because I think you can piggyback on them. They are starting a huge global networking dynamic based on regional associations. I guess that I would, if I were you, I will piggyback on that strategy, trying to see if we can link the chapters to those regional, so we can build up with them, because they started in 2019, so they are very young on global networking. We can jump in. Third, you need to clarify the synergies or overlappings with the World Union of Jesuit Alumni. Nobody understands that you have Loyola Club, World Union of Jesuit Alumni, how to say, Jesuit Alumni and Friends. You have here in GFAN, and you have Alpha Sigma Nu. So we need to clarify how do you synergize with the other alumni associations. Another point, fourth, we need to learn from the dynamic of secondary ed because they have been the only one successful on activating the network up to now. So please be aware of those 3 steps. And the lastly is I think you need to start thinking on how to do discernment process all together in order to imagine projecting the future as out of a common discernment of the network, not just of a board or of a group of a chapter. You need to create the conversation or it will not emerge as a possibility. 3 ideas are not mine. I put there the authors, but 3 ideas of this network activation. So I think the world is going to change through relationships. So that's the strength of the networks is that when you link people with the same vision, things start to happen. So our challenge is how to foster these critical connections so we can be a community of practice around our common passion and vision, and that creates what they call system of influence that actually start creating possibilities that they were not there before. Sorry about the complexity right now, but this is a final piece for especially for the leaders in order to understand there is a very interesting strategy that Alpha Sigma Nu is perfect for it because you are actually linking specific individuals. So your strength is not your size. Your strength is the linking special individuals with a special vision and potential. And we need to build on that. So we can be a community of practice around some ideas and some projects that can create an influence that we cannot imagine if we know how to tackle in a proper way. That is what we call emergence, and I think will be a key element of our future strategy to activate Alpha Sigma Nu into global network. So this is it. The Pope is with us. No one can fight life in isolation. Dreams are built together. I hope this a lot of ideas can be useful for your own discussion. I will be happy to jump in on any discussion. I'm not sure if we have time now, but thank you for your passion. I hope it will be working. Thank you.
I'm so glad you remember. Otherwise, really translate.
Thank you.
We have a panel coming up next. Before we jump in, were there any questions about it? I don't want to use this opportunity to ask questions.
Yes, yes. Okay.
So I would say, Dani, that the blessing of one of the many blessings of my God in the last week has been to meet international students and to be at meetings